Beth and Kelly Show, episode 12, everybody.
Ow! 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 That was my best, like Wayne and Garth thing, sound effect for the day.
Fantastic.
A little bit of a
Lovely.
fail. I was afraid to be too loud and like blow out the speakers of Zoom. I don't want to do that. I haven't updated my settings.
It's already way too easy to like top everything out,
Right. And then when you've got a laugh like this one over here, it's
Right.
hilarious trying to edit this thing into the podcast because my laugh is a problem.
Well, it's a thing that
Well, it exists.
it must be embraced.
Right. And I mean, there's a lot of different versions of it too. And we are here with somebody who knows all of those versions pretty well.
Yeah.
And that's Jared Tanner, who is a former student teacher of the Beth and Kelly Show, but has risen to his own fame beyond us.
All right.
Hey, as the band director at Liberty High School, which, like, when I go do a clinic there, Jared, my GPS says I'm in Renton, but you're in, like, the Issaquah School District.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's across school
That
district,
accurate?
but in Renton. Yes, exactly.
Okay.
That's Washington for the folks that.
Oh, right,
listen
we're
to
talking
the
about
state.
Washington State. That's right.
So, Kelly, this whole maxing out Zoom thing with
Yes.
like just simply laughing, it reminds me of something I've been noticing quite a bit lately.
I just, like, I already know what you're about to say, and I'm just mesmerized by the, like, amazingly perfect teacher swerve that you just
Right,
did
it's
there.
the feather in. What we're doing is the feather in of the puppet.
The thing I
So-
wanted to say.
Right. So, the maxing out of Zoom so easily by simply just laughing reminds me of what I'm seeing a lot lately in my various meetings with many different music educators, a lot of whom teach band and are male. What is with ultra fancy mic setups?
Of, like, white dudes that teach band, like, very specifically that teach band.
Right.
Like that. Sorry, people who are
Recording
listening.
gear.
I don't know what that is, but it really does look like the thing that they use in the Ghostbusters to slurp up the ghosts.
Or like the thing that clicks when it detects a ghost.
Yes. I don't know
Um,
what that was you just showed us, but it looks fancy.
but I'm talking about like crazy handheld recording devices, crazy like radio DJ type mics.
And the headphones.
And I have seen people show pictures of their teaching space, and these people have gone ahead and ordered like TV studio lighting, folks, and they're setting it up
Yeah.
in their kitchen or wherever it is that they teach.
I lovingly say this. I think it's like Bitmoji classrooms for band directors. You know? That's what I think it is.
Yeah, I mean, it's dazzling. For sure. And we've been definitely teasing Jared about his very fancy setup
Yeah.
as we were like booping into the live show here.
Yeah.
And I had mentioned that I'd really like to unpack this thing because
Yeah.
I don't understand it. And then it was like, well, who better to unpack it with than a white dude that teaches band?
Yes.
This is the question. And if we could figure this out, I mean, it really points to why I always feel so othered at band festivals. You know, like I'm already typically the only woman, and then so all the men have the fancy tuxedo, and like, what do I wear? And so like, there's all those things, and then, but it's more than that. It's like the conversation. I don't even feel like I can even participate in the conversation unless, you know, I'm just doing the whatever banter that we all do, but I mean to like really be friends and dig deep. I need a whole shift in like I just don't even want to talk about the same things, or it just feels like we're so far different that I can't connect on our field. Like our approach is so different.
Yeah.
There's a thread here. It's like, the really valuing gear.
Right.
Like I've played on the exact same trombone and the exact same mouthpiece, and that's it. I have one trombone and one mouthpiece since 1996. Like, but most other brass players, men, who I know have like 8 versions of almost the same horn, 24 mouthpieces that all allegedly do some other thing.
Right.
And like this way of thinking, and then like sort of seeing teaching band as like a game, or this thing that has all these very specific, like a technician, thinking of yourself as a technician. Does this all go together somehow?
I'm going to also interject. In our COVID times, jumping into, I guess maybe I'm coming from like a position of a slight bit of jealousy. Like, I feel like I don't know how to use the tech devices. I could get them if I wanted, but I've never like done that yet.
But like,
and then also
I think that's the thing. You don't want to learn how to do it,
Well,
and you don't want to buy it.
well, it gives me this like bad feeling of like FOMO or something like that. Like they're using these fancy like apps and platforms and band garage band or whatever, and like doing multi-track mixing and like all the things that create really cool products for kids that I wish I could just do. But I know that if I started doing that, it would take me so many hours of like trial and error learning that I'm just like, oh my God, where do I start? And do I start? And so like for me, that's kind of the feeling that I get.
Okay.
Right.
That's a very different feeling than mine. Mine
Yeah.
is gross. This reminds me of Star Wars or something. I
Right.
wouldn't do that either. What are you doing?
There's that too.
So not artistic.
Right.
Jared, talk to me.
Talk.
Well, I can talk about myself.
Okay, well, that's all we
first.
really need.
I don't know. I got into when I was like a teenager. I was a really lucky kid. My dad is a producer director in Spokane. He's a film works on film, and he had a recording studio in his basement that I was able to like go and bug their sound guy and have him help us set up my high school rock band down there. And so we'd try to record, and then I'd mess with the
All right,
track.
well, this
so
is a hella cool reason that you like all this.
so I still kind of like, I still have like dreams of, I don't know, like, dreams of being a rock and roller, that won't happen, but it's fun to have.
Oh, right. As soon as
I
you
have
said
those
that,
dreams.
I
Yeah.
remember, I always think of you as a trumpet player, but
Yeah.
as soon as you said that, I remember that you play guitar also.
Right.
Okay.
So I don't know. I have that kind of other, I've got this other kind of track. So some of the tech, I'm not a super techie guy, but I like some of it for sure. I'm not gonna lie.
I think you're the most low tech of band director bros that I know.
Well, I'll take it. I'll take it. But that's thinking. Kelly, you were talking about like just feeling a disconnect between men and band director circles, and I don't want to like try to draw too like stark of lines, but like I wonder if some of it has to do with like what attracts certain people to the profession, or just attracts certain people to band. Like
Right.
I don't know if it's a certain thing about band that some guys like. I don't know. Like, why are there so many trumpet player band directors? There's so many trumpet player band directors.
And trombone. Like
And
some
trombone,
are at a thesis.
drummers too. I don't know. Like it. So I don't know. That's my.
Well, you know,
question.
yesterday I had
I think about
a
this.
meeting with a bunch of folks um, from NAFME, and we were discussing kind of some of the priorities that NAFME needs to start focusing on and will start focusing on. And somebody brought up college prep programs for music education teachers, and they pointed out that we tend to get the same kind of people into music ed programs, which means that the same kind of people continue to come out into the teaching profession, and
Right.
that there is no like change in that that they can predict like anytime soon. Like they pointed out the latest crop of music teachers is the same as they used to be. The latest crop of students studying music ed in college are the same as they used to be. It hasn't changed. Uh,
Right.
Because
So-
band directing looks like this. This is
Right.
what a good band director looks like. Not just in physical appearance, but in like personality.
Right.
And, you know, a big personality, a loud personality, that's a band director, right? And qualities like someone who's really into gear or is like really thinks of themselves as a technician who's, you know, whittling this music down to its I don't know. I'm really
Yeah.
fascinated by that.
Yeah, it is very interesting. I hear you. My wife and I have been talking about. My wife is an elementary music teacher, Margaret Brinkerhoff,
Excellent.
and there's been this like video that's been flying around the internet, the Adam Neely music theory video about music theory being.
Yes, we have an
Like-
entire episode slated in the future for
Yeah.
that.
About that, which
Yeah.
that's awesome. But like thinking about, you know, talking about if colleges were to really revamp what music education looks like, is 4 years even enough to really change a musician well enough? Like, is that? I mean, we wonder if we think it probably needs to start much earlier, but
Yeah.
it requires us to be able to. So I don't know. We've been talking about that in the wake.
Well,
of that.
Jared, you know, if you had tuned in last week with
I
our
didn't.
two guests,
Mhm.
Jessica Stair and Pam
Later on the
Evich.
podcast.
Yeah, and Jessica is a general music teacher, elementary. And during that episode, we kind of all came to a collective agreement that general music is a little farther ahead in the game
Oh yeah.
than
Light years.
than instrumental music, and I'd venture to say also that instrumental music in the public schools is a little bit farther ahead of the game than college. So, you know, we take off from elementary, the stuff that they're working on in elementary. What would happen? What would be like the best case scenario, a dream scene? What would be the coolest thing ever when kids go from elementary general music to secondary instrumental or ensemble music? What would be the dream scene there for us? Because if it starts, you know, before the 4 years of college, what would be the dream? How could we make that a reality?
That's a great question. I mean, like, I always think about, my wife and I talk about this a lot. Like, okay, so a fifth grader finishes, like, you know, say doing cool, like, West African drumming and dancing and stuff, and then they pick up a violin and they play, like, whole notes. And they spend the next couple of years, so they just got done doing, like, polyrhythms and stuff. And now they just go, like,
Hanging around. Or
like,
yeah.
and so, like, I have no, like, this is not a land that I teach in, so I can't say I have much input on it, but like, how in the world could a person kind of both go back to like playing 3 notes at a time and keeping up some of these rhythmic and like melodic stuff that they've already been doing, and like try to tie these two music learnings worlds together?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think some of that might be accomplished by not completely abandoning learning by ear
Right.
when you start secondary ensemble music.
Right.
Call and response. It seems like call and response goes bye-bye when a student gets to be a secondary level musician, because reading notes becomes the most important thing.
Becomes king.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. You know, that piece that we're talking about, the music theory piece.
Yeah.
I mean, that part of it wasn't the whole premise. What I mean, it was something I've thought about for years, so it wasn't that revelatory for me, but it really got me spinning out, and I've spent the last couple of days just like literally dreaming about this and thinking about it all day. Is music education at the college level, and
Yeah.
how severely broken I believe it to be. Just telling my own story, which we will not do today. We'll have a whole separate episode on it. But if I think about just my own story of becoming a music ed student and then accomplishing all of these classes, which are really, really Western art music focused, and then choosing to supplement and add on years of classes to learn the things that are actually the things that I use. I had to opt into that, and how much we really are not preparing our students to be creative teachers by having that 2-year package of Western theory, ear training, and history. And when that is what you've had, and you haven't opted for ethnomusicology classes and women's studies classes and gender study, they're all of these programs are changing their names really rapidly. They're responsive, like at the UW, the CHID program, Comparative History of Ideas, and looking at the intersections of race, class, and gender, and these you can opt into those classes. I did, but at my own cost. It wasn't required. So to be like a really creative teacher in this time, you are needing to educate yourself on your own time. These were not tools you were given in college. They weren't mandated to you, which I have been just spinning about in really, really ways.
I was flat out punished for being in a rock band and having a gig. So
I was also punished. I was told I was too jazz, and so I couldn't take jazz band anymore. I had to take the wind ensemble. Like, what? But what about all of my colleagues who have never had a jazz experience and now teach jazz bands? What about, are they too classical? That was never a problem.
Right.
So, but I am a more well-rounded teacher because of it, able to adapt at this time in really creative ways. Which is why, well, that was gonna be my beautiful segue into talking about Jared being our student teacher. Because Beth and I knew that the college music ed experience is not well-rounded enough, and certainly doesn't prepare a teacher for what they're going to have to do. So we would always take student teachers, always, never said no. And some of our student teachers had an easier time than others, and I feel like Jared Tanner had a really easy time, like slipping into at least our philosophy of doing things.
Yeah.
And you were always kind of okay, or at least you pretended to be okay to do things on the fly,
Yeah.
And we would sit, this is how we made decisions about our program, is we would sit in my office at lunch and talk about, I've been wondering about, or is this a problem? And just really talking it around and just coming up with a solution to try. And Jared was always on board with that, I think.
Yeah, totally. I
I'm
mean, when I
curious-
got to Washington
Yeah.
Middle School, I feel like in music ed circles, I wasn't so used to being around people who were interested in kind of both living in informal music making kinds of lands and formal
Yeah.
music making kind of lands. So
Right.
I felt kind of weird, and so coming into Washington Middle School with both of you felt like, oh my gosh, these are people like me.
Yeah.
Same
Yeah,
way.
it's
We're
like,
equally comfortable
yay.
with formal and informal. So
Yeah.
yeah. What, like, I'm just curious, what's still from that time, which is a pretty long time ago, are there things that you still use? Like, is there anything that because you don't teach middle school, you're a high school director.
No. I mean, I saw you two do a ton of call and response, maybe in particular Beth.
Yeah.
And so I still, it's like I always have a trumpet with me, and especially my younger bands. There's so much, okay, it's not sounding like I want it to right now, so I'm going to play it. Okay.
Yeah.
Play it back. It's like short little call and responses. That's one thing I do so much, and that's a real thing I inherited. And watching you guys did some funky arrangements, where you'd take like a jazz band chart and you'd have, just spread it out around the band and teach a kid how to transpose and stuff. And so thinking about using non-traditional kinds of like the jazz band chart for these people, that's something
So
that
we've
kind of
actually
lives with
given
me.
jazz band charts to the full orchestra and concert band.
Right. So it
Right.
kind of helped stretch my thinking and
Yeah,
tried-
so sometimes when Kelly and I are presenting at like ASTA or Gen or whatever, teachers will be like, well, how do you collaborate between orchestra and jazz band or like band and orchestra without an actual chart that has parts? What do you guys just like use Finale to like make transpose parts for the kids?
No,
Or
no.
like use Finale? I don't know. I don't even know how to open that program.
No.
Like I cannot use Finale, yo.
I have used it once in
I
college.
can't use any of that. I don't know how to use the notation software. I don't. Okay? I don't.
I don't actually want to know. Why do I need to know?
But what
There's never a time that it is more beneficial for me to put it in Finale than it is for the kid to do it. Why
Right,
would I
well-
ever do that?
What we're good at is taking a friggin' oboe part, giving it to a violist, and
Right.
telling them, you're gonna have to read treble.
They need to learn to do
And
that
it's
anyway.
like, grab your pencil and write note names, bro.
Go ahead.
right.
You know?
In fact, you
Like-
can do that right now while we're playing it if you want.
Yeah.
Not even homework.
And here is a little trick for if I give you bassoon music, but you play tenor sax.
Right.
Right.
Here's a little trick for reading those notes that Kelly knows how to talk about, and I don't. I forgot. I need the little half sheet.
Well,
I always
first,
forget
you
that,
wouldn't
too.
give the bassoon part to the tenor sax, but that is all right. You would give it
Right. That was just like
very because they're
hypothetical.
flat instruments. So, so that anyway, I love to talk about this stuff, but it's so easy, and the kids need to know how to do that. It's awesome, and it gives them lifelong music making skills.
Well, it's also that, but like, people are like, well, they don't have Thus and So rock song on J.W. Pepper, so I guess we can't play it. You know?
That is the very perfect thing for Jared to talk about. Because,
Exactly.
he always has his jazz band participate in this work, and I'm gonna crack a can while you talk about it.
Yeah. So, it's actually with you at Washington Middle School. The first time I ever tried teaching a tune by ear, I remember it was one of these collective like orchestra and band days where there's like 100 kids in the room,
Like, no.
and it was just bonkers and fun. But I survived, and they did too. Most importantly. But anyway, ever since then, I've kind of like always with jazz band had a tune that we learned by ear. I think I went to an All Northwest conference that was in a session done by either Vern Seeler or Rob Tapper. I can't remember. It was one of the two of those guys.
Yeah, both very
And
good.
they said that they always have their band play one tune totally by ear. And I'm like, oh my gosh, yes, I'm going to do that too. So ever
And you
since,
do that even at festivals and stuff. Like,
oh yeah,
that's your
heck yeah, at
yeah,
festivals,
that's
it's
that.
usually my best tune. It's
I was
usually the
just gonna
best
say
sounding
that.
tune.
Yeah,
Mhm.
because Jared will often have me come in before they have a performance, and I was gonna share that I think that is always the best tune. Whatever one that they learned on their own and committed to memory, brought into themselves, it is always the best song, and it's not necessarily because they like the song more.
Mhm.
They know it. They've
Right.
absorbed it. It is
Right.
who they are, and that makes it the funnest one.
I think it
It's
also,
not the one they want to play the most. You know what I mean?
it's
But it
both
sounds-
sides. It's
Yeah.
like both sides. It also, I have to kind of do a lot of work for it too, because like
Mhm.
I really need to learn it very well by ear. Like I need to, trying to style. I'm learning the whole arrangement
Right.
and trying to jot it out so I remember it. So I don't know.
Can you talk
I
about the
know.
process of how you do that with your kids?
Sure,
Like-
it's super messy.
Great.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's
Like-
super messy.
That's something that I think band directors and really classically focused ensemble directors at the secondary level definitely struggle with the idea of messy.
Mhm.
Because when you're sight reading something, like the lowest level of messy is not really that messy. Like we all started together and made it to this point, and there were spots it was all together, and so the idea of it being completely from scratch, I think, is really terrifying to the technicians and perfectionists
Right.
in the world.
Right.
Right. Okay, so it starts out as messy.
Yeah, usually I start with so I've been doing a lot of New Orleans second line music in the last couple of years. So I usually start with the bass line, and usually I'm learning it. So I learn the bass line and then I teach it to them, and we play it. I make them sing it. I usually make them sing it before I let them play it, and then I just kind of turn them loose, and it's like wild for a little while.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, let's try it. All right. Oh no, we didn't. We got to stop on measure 4. Boom, boom, boom. Hold that note when you get there. Okay. All right. Let's try it again. Boom, 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 boom. Hold that note when you get there. All that kind of stuff, and it's nuts.
So what you
right?
just demonstrated are general music teaching skills
Yes.
Right.
of singing it with the notes and the instruction in the same presentation.
Yep.
Hold that note. Like
Right.
that skill, choir directors and general music people do. Instrumental directors don't usually do that. What you just did is a really important thing for everyone to add to their bag of tricks.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, keep going. So after that,
I don't know. Then it's everyone learns the melody.
okay.
Everybody, tubas, everyone,
Baseline
drummers.
Mm-hmm.
I usually do. Well, it just depends. I mean, when
Yeah.
I'm doing New Orleans stuff, set baseline first, melody, and like drummers. Drummers have to go to mallets. You got to learn how to do this thing. Grab a piano, grab something.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, melody for same thing. Melody's gonna take a little longer depending on the tune. I really
And
love
so far,
choosing.
has there been like a lot of theory so far, or is it really just like
No.
learning it, you sing it, you play it?
It's as little theory as we can. Like I typically only do things that are pentatonic. Like that's one thing. You got to choose something that's really simple. It's
Take a
about
bite out. It's easier. Like
yeah,
something you can take a bite out of.
exactly.
And a melody with words really helps too. I think.
Yeah.
Yes. And yeah, so I a lot of times try to choose something that has a little singing because my kids like to sing. And if you take that to a festival or you're playing it for the student body and you can get people to sing along,
Yes.
and performance value is just like through the roof when you
And
start
it's
singing.
fun.
And it is fun,
Isn't that what we're supposed? I mean, isn't that the whole point?
right?
Yeah.
Right.
And so you'll add. I mean, by the time I hear it,
Right.
it's a piece
Right.
that's been arranged.
Right. sometimes I just rip it off of the recording. Like, exactly. Like, okay, we figure out what they do for the backgrounds. Sometimes it's exact, but sometimes it's like, okay, let's all go out into sectionals, and I want each group to come back in like 15 minutes with a lick.
Mm.
And then we're going to build these licks on top of each other. If you're doing minor pentatonic stuff, you can stack anything on top of anything.
Mhm.
Like Legos.
Like put it over like a dominant, like a 5 pedal, like a little boom, 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 little, you know, and put all this stuff on top of each other, and it'll sound cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
So kids can figure it out. So then you got a little student composition piece sometimes. Sometimes it does not work also. Sometimes it is just Kelly, I think you've come too when it's been like, this one is not so good.
The fail.
Yeah.
Well, this is where the teacher steps in, right? You're like, okay, something sounds funkified. We're gonna need to go in here and cellos, could you change the notes you're playing to these 2 notes instead?
Right.
Let's see what happens there.
Let's try that.
And then just, you know, tinker until you figure out something that works. You know, I think that the violin ones are overpowering everybody there. So violin 1, I need you to tacit during this section. You know, and the kids at Washington used to have a thing about when Kelly and I were like asking them to tacit. They had their pencils ready to write that at any time.
Right.
Sometimes I'd be like, would it be okay if I tacited here? They like hand off themselves.
They would even suggest it themselves.
Preemptive
Nice.
tacit.
Nice.
Do you think the violin should tacit in these measures?
Oh my God. That's funny. Well, I totally know what you're talking about because I've seen it, and also we've all 3 done this together. But I would imagine there are people listening or not even ever trying to do something like this, which is really quite simple.
Right.
And I don't know about you, but for me, it's the most fun I ever have with my kids.
Totally.
Are these projects? And
Right.
go ahead.
I don't know. Maybe think about a couple of tunes that are great to start with. Like one of my favorites to do is Liza Jane.
Oh, that's a
Liza
good
Jane,
one.
great bass line, great
And
melody.
Sammy Miller and the congregation have a really great
Oh.
recording of that. That's
Mhm.
totally suitable as a reference piece.
Right.
And that's what's so fun about teaching in this way is that it's so natural to have conversations about history
Oh yeah.
and to weave in listening. It's natural extension. You guys find that too?
Oh yeah, well, you know, it makes me think of one of the last times Kelly and I had a chance to do this together. It was a particularly big year for losing iconic music artists, and I think it was 2016, maybe. The year Prince died.
The year Prince died.
So that was a crazy year.
Was that when you were with us, Jared? Was it the
No.
Prince time, or was it the second year we did this? Okay.
So that year, Prince died. Merle Haggard died.
Yeah.
Earth, Wind, and Fire guy died. What's his name?
Not sure.
Starts with an M. I'll think of it later.
Yes.
Maurice.
Yeah, Maurice.
Yes.
Yeah.
The guy from the Eagles. What's his name?
Glenn
Fry.
Fry.
Yeah, and like,
What was the last person we did? Well, anyway, it was like, okay, so we had been on the team.
Prince.
We had been on the team of Pam Ivasic appointed team, and she was like the head of it. She was our guest last week to put together an assessment that would function like like a standardized test for music classes. And so we were tasked with a couple other folks of figuring out what it would look like. So we wrote this cornerstone assessment thing, and then um, and so it also, but there was also, but then later we had to weave in like a baseline assessment thing, but I think this was before that. Anyway, we needed a cornerstone project, something where we could show student growth and that it was student led from beginning to end. And so that would typically be something like what Jared's talking about, like writing a piece as a class, arranging something.
Mhm.
We had used Bach chorale books before, where kids would, group themselves up and teach themselves, this type of thing. But that year with Prince, we decided to put the jazz band and the fiddler kids with the jazz band kids, and have them arrange and perform one song by one of those artists who had passed.
We assigned groups. I believe we assigned songs even. We assigned them an artist and we assigned a song.
It was kind of like draw names out of a hat, but like they were grouped. So anyone that played like a low instrument that could play a bass line, they were all put in one hat and one name each pulled out, so that they were kind of score, whatever you say that. Okay, and then I think we might have assigned which song of that artist they would do.
Yeah.
But that was more to avoid potential like swear words and things.
Well, and also just, wheels spinning with kids not truly like knowing those artists very well, because like those artists were a little older.
Yeah.
And not all of them were as familiar with Desperado as we are.
Right. And that was the required song for sure, dude. Oh my God. And it was fun, and the kids had fun, and they killed it. And so I think we ended up just having that be their performance piece at the concert.
We turned around and they performed it for the concert.
Parents freaked out. They loved it. And like they never get to see their kid as one of six, right up in front of the stage on a microphone. Right. It was so different, Most of the wind players were singing something. It was cool. So I think Jared joined us the second year of that. You were definitely with us in the spring when we did this project, because I remember you doing it.
Okay.
Yeah.
You remember it?
I don't remember this. I definitely was teaching at Liberty when Prince died, so.
Okay.
Oh.
So, not sure.
Maybe this wasn't.
It might not have been me.
No, I know you did it because you had your guitar.
Oh, okay. I remember this now.
How did we divide it up then that time?
Doing this.
I don't remember that very well.
Well, it was very new then, because maybe Prince wasn't the first year. But anyway, it was an awesome project, and totally what you're doing at Liberty with your kids. So really what you need is bass line, right?
Bass line.
And everybody learns the bass line.
Everybody.
Every single soul learns the bass line. And depending on like level of how advanced, you could certainly do this with beginners, and the bass line is simply playing the root of each chord. Footballs, the root of each chord. That's the bass line. Right? And it can become more advanced, and your high school jazz students would be the most advanced version of this, where you can actually play. In the end, they could be improvising a bass line.
Right.
And this could be your bass trombonist doing this, right?
Sax. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
The skills that are being offered through this way of teaching are deep.
Right.
So everyone learns the bass line to begin with. And then you're suggesting, and I agree, that after that is melody.
Right.
Singing it first. If the song has words, that's even better.
Yep.
Everyone sings it.
Everyone's singing first. Yep.
Everyone plays the melody, even the bass player. Right?
Yep, that too.
Everyone learns the melody, and that's by ear.
By ear.
So one of the other things that um, I think really helps in these situations, this is something that I know a lot of orchestra teachers find as a hitch in getting this kind of stuff done. Um, Rhythm section instruments. So um, these things are so much easier to put together if you've got some kind of strummed guitar situation.
Right.
Also, it's way cooler, guys. Let me tell you, it's way cooler when you can add drums.
Yeah.
It's always going to be cooler. So if you're
Always-
just with choir or just with orchestra, there's probably a kid in that room that does spend some time with the drum set on the weekends. Chances
Right.
are high, first of all. But if not, there are other kids in the school. Or
Right. Or get someone to come in. I see on our feed that the other Jared is currently watching. Hey, Jared Sutton.
okay,
So when Jared Sessink started teaching at Washington right when Kelly left, I was just blown away that whenever he wanted, he could sit down at the drum set and play. So that was a skill that he learned in college that I was jealous about. Like, I wish that they had taught me in college, and that's actually one good thing that they're doing at the college that he went to study music ed. He came away with the skill of like being able to sit down at the drum set and play. But get the orchestra teachers, get the band guy to come in and play drums. Sit in with your kids on guitar.
it'll be fun.
Add those rhythm section instruments to fill out the project. It's not just, it's made a lot cooler with those rhythm section instruments. Don't ever be afraid of like incorporating them.
Oh yeah.
So after that moment where we've got like basic understanding of we've learned the basic understanding of the chord structure by learning the bass line and the melody. So this feels to me like the natural point to insert some basic chord theory, right?
Right. Yep.
Like these are the chords to the song. This is the four.
Right.
It's an
Or
it's an AABA or it's
Right.
a blues.
I
right?
like to call it, instead of like a chord chart or something like that, I like to say, can you get a song map going for that? Just map it out.
Map it out. Make a little lead sheet.
Lead sheet.
The most basic. We're not talking about giant steps here, folks. Forget about
Right.
it. We're talking about 3 chords in the truth,
Yeah.
3 chords and the truth.
for sure.
Totally.
And then you're able to teach, let's everyone play the third of this chord. Great. And then just play whole notes along the changes, right? Everyone on the thirds. Okay, fifths, then sevenths. This kind of very basic theory serves all of your students. And then starts to inspire some of the background lines, some of the riffs that you might write. Having trouble figuring out what note? Okay, let's play this rhythm. Bop, bop, bop. Bop, bop, bop. Okay, great. We're going to play that rhythm here and pick a note. Thirds, fifths, and sevens. Try and evenly spread it around. Let's
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
I liked that. I heard way too many fifths though, and that's kind of the least important
Do
note.
something
so,
different.
Yeah.
One thing I've noticed,
You and you switch. Okay, you're gonna hop on the thirds and the set. Great. That style of teaching.
one thing I've noticed is that kids are really good at coming up with those rhythms.
Yes.
And this is a way that they can contribute to the writing of the arrangement.
Right.
You know,
And one thing, Kelly's talking numbers, like, I think is, if you want to do this stuff, I think is important to get your kids thinking in numbers pronto. Like, I do lots of, like, singing warm-ups with my kids where I just, we do little, like, I just hold fingers and they sing
It's
it.
a
And
very
sometimes I
radical
split them.
thing for a band director to
Right.
be doing. So we're gonna talk about that in just a minute. But go ahead.
Yeah, so just like, and then like, okay, I write some numbers on the board, and it's like, okay, what song did I write?
right?
And then they got to figure it out, and then they say, oh, it's this, So get them thinking really quickly in numbers, because if you're dealing with transposing instruments and you want them to go to a room together and work without you, that's going to be their language they use.
We don't want to be using letter names.
Right.
That's not universal.
Right.
Right.
This is something that string teachers do and choir teachers do, right? We can use letter names because they're universal in your classroom, right? But
Yeah.
that is not the case for band students who
Because it's all different.
they're transposers. So band directors almost never use note names. It's almost always numbers or scale degrees. And I think in this case, it would be very valuable for the rest to borrow that trick from the band directors. That is how you very easily learn some basic theory.
Right. And then you can apply the numbers to chords as well, right? You know, the Nashville number system, folks.
Right. Right.
So I think that's cool. And I think to put a piece together where maybe all the kids might sing,
Yeah.
or maybe there are a couple of kids that you discover are singers. Can we just talk about that, Beth, for a minute?
Yes. Yes.
Jared, did you go to any festivals with us? I don't remember.
Not that I remember.
You didn't do a trip?
No, I didn't get to go on the trip. No.
Oh.
You guys went somewhere and I had to stay back. That's what I remember.
Oh man, that is total bummer.
That is like epic bummer, because the trips are really fun. But one time, I was reminded recently on Facebook by a friend of ours, Barbara, who and I taught. She has five children. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they all came through the Washington Middle School music department. Anyway, awesome family. Anyway, I was talking about my camper, and she reminded Beth and I on the socials of the time band bus home from the Lionel Hampton Jazz Festival when we brought the karaoke machine, and we had purchased the karaoke machine to go to camp.
Right.
The younger students, we thought we'd do some karaoke. And so we brought it on the bus, and I had like at the karaoke bar, I had the folder that you flip through for the songs. We had it all queued up, man, we got an amp.
All the good ones.
All the good. It was great. And for a while, the kids didn't really want to participate.
It was just Kelly and I trading off. We were just trading off classic rock hits.
There was a lot of GNR, and then all of a sudden, some kids wanted to participate. And Marshall and Devin, I'm going to use first names only. They came down the aisle. Could we do a song? Yes. And it was something.
Jackson 5.
It was Jackson 5 for sure. And I just remember that my head exploded.
Yeah.
These were brass players, right? A trumpet player and a trombonist. And they killed it.
We're like, oh, so now we know they can sing.
They can sing. And so we went ahead and added vocals to David Marriott did an arrangement of Crazy for the
Willie Nelson
and the fiddlers. And so then we added vocals to it, and obviously insisted that Marshall and Devin would sing, and they did, and it was amazing. But you discover things about your students that you don't always know when you do some karaoke.
And what remains as one of the funniest moments in my teaching career. I don't know if we've talked about this before, but
No.
shortly after those two had the courage to get up and request a tune, our go-to bassist, Marco, decided he was going to come up and request a tune.
Right.
So Marco was in his voice-changing phase, but
Right, because it's middle school.
it was coming into, the reality that Marco's going to have a lower voice.
Right. This
And-
kid's got a low voice.
And, you know, he went ahead and requested Highway to Hell.
And we will always do some ACDs when asked. Okay.
But it was,
down like 2 octaves.
yeah, it was like,
Okay, that's what happened.
Highway to Hell. Like, I can't even go that low.
Oh, amazing. And it was perfectly in tune.
Yeah.
Just 2
And-
octaves too.
And he had all the words memorized because he had already, you know, been a super AC/DC fan.
Which was the best part, actually. I take that back. It
Yeah.
wasn't that it was 2 octaves down. The best part was that Marco was the most serious of humans.
Yes, so serious.
Serious. Like, this kid took his musicianship very seriously.
Classical and jazz.
Classical and jazz. Like, the consummate musician.
Yes.
Like, and so the fact that he was listening to AC/DC in his off time was so.
But seriously, like he was listening to it seriously. He was studying AC/DC.
He was studying it. Yeah. Oh my God, that's the best. The best. Did we sufficiently cover this way of teaching a song by ear?
Well, if anyone doesn't want to do it by now, let us know so we can schedule a Zoom to talk you into it.
Yeah.
Hopefully
It will change
Hopefully
your
you're
practice.
interested and want to.
Yeah.
Right. I think some of it too is, I don't know. I struggle with goal-oriented thinking and planning,
Uh-huh.
and I think that maybe that's why it jives really well with me, is because you kind of feel around in the dark and you throw things out there and
See if it sticks.
see if it sticks, and
Yeah.
it's just messy.
But it is also goal oriented because you are creating a product. You're working
Right.
toward a real product.
Totally. It's
And
just
this-
It's
like
a lot messier.
just the path there is not very clear, and you kind of find your path. Yeah.
And it-
Exactly.
And it doesn't look anything like a secondary instrumental classroom usually does.
Right. One thing, since I do one thing I've done, which is it's become a tradition in my jazz band. In the spring, I spend a good amount of time in combos. And a few years ago, I saw John Baptiste, who's the band director of a Tonight Show band. He did I saw him do a YouTube cover of Miley Cyrus's Wrecking Ball, and it was just rad. And I'm like, light bulb moment. Like, this is jazz, right? Isn't jazz partially built on taking pop music and doing the jazz process to pop music?
Right.
So I'm going to make my new little snobs in jazz band. I'm going to say you have to do a tune that's been a top 40 hit in the last 3 years, and you're going to do the jazz process to it.
Yeah.
And so now it's a thing. We do it every year, and kids ask, Mr. Tanner, are we going to do the covers again this year?
Which is
And-
like identical to
Yeah.
what Beth and I were doing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's so fun.
It's very
Man,
fun.
I swear to God, it was like a moment for me seeing that group of kids perform Sing Me Back Home by Merle Haggard. It was like a serious moment for me. I am a country music person. Like, that is like, when I boil everything down,
Yeah.
the bottom line for me is country music. And
For sure.
my God, it was just like an emotional moment. What was that kid's name that sang it? He was a trumpet player. Oh my God, it was so amazing.
It'll come to me and I'll mention
Yeah.
it when it does. Yeah, it's cool, and also like we know that kids identify differently to the music of our time.
Sure.
Right? That's just a part of the circle.
Yeah.
So it was extra cool that it was something that was important to Beth. But then you think about where we were teaching in the Central District of Seattle.
Right.
And how even less Merle was a part of the fabric there.
Right.
Beth is from Montana, so
Right. But it
That's
was
cool.
embraced. It was embraced by that group of kids who played a diverse array of instruments, had a diverse array of skills, and were diverse.
And yes, they were made to do it by their teachers, but in the most simple way.
Yeah.
You're going to take this song and you're going to make your own version of it however you see fit.
Mm-hmm. And they honored it. They honored it. Like, they took it seriously.
Right. And then so Jared's is even bigger than that because ours was like groups of 5.
Yeah.
So you're working with a group of 20
Right.
who are putting it together.
I usually, my combo project's similar. It's like 5
Mm-hmm.
to 8.
Okay.
You could do that, but you could also do it.
You could also
You
do
do
big.
your whole big band thing.
Right.
And we've done it with groups of 150. When Simone
Yeah.
Chapin came, we did this exact
Mm-hmm.
type of teaching with 150 kids. It's
I know that we're kind of getting low on time, but like one thing that I've kind of run into that I struggle with this is in doing a lot of the music I do by ear is music by not white songwriters.
Yeah.
These are largely black songwriters, and I do it by ear. And a lot of the times I've not paid them. This year was the first time I actually I did a Hot 8 brass band tune, so I went and found their people and wrote them and got the rights, and I think I paid $100 to have the rights for a year.
Well, that's the right thing to do.
And
That's actually a great practice.
it is a good practice. It was cheap, but so I've got a lot of guilt about
how
it.
it works.
You know, and
It's
so
how we do that.
we have to be careful and have those conversations with our kids. And
Yes.
And Jared, it would be really cool if you went ahead, wrote that idea up in a 1-page article and submitted it to the MEA magazine, because everyone should read that. Everyone should have a step-by-step process. Right to
Why
BMI.
and the how we do
Yeah.
that. And let's make that available to people because it's really important.
yeah,
A lot of us don't know where to start, but that is an important aspect that we need to do.
right.
There are reasons that the songs that are published and arranged for instrumental directors to buy, there's a reason that it's institutional racism, folks. We're not paying necessarily everyone who should be paid for their contributions. You know? The whole system's a little bit rigged, y'all. Write your own piece, arrange it yourselves, and give the people who made this music worth loving. Let's give the money there.
Yeah.
Totally into that. Maybe that should be
A QRD. I mean, let's get it out there so that people can just look at it and be like, okay, first you contact a ASCAP BMI, then you request this, then you do this, and
Jared, that will be your homework assignment as issued by the Beth and Kelly Show.
it's your asynchronous work.
Okay.
Payment will be $0.
Right.
However, you may add it to your resume that no one really looks at because we're music teachers. But you're going to do it anyway because you're Jared Tanner and you're the best.
Oh goodness.
No, I do really think it's super cool, and I feel a lot of pride about who you've become as a teacher, although I can only take credit for 10 weeks of it, which is not very much. But, I mean, you're amazing because of who you are and who you came to us as, which was a really, really open-minded human who was willing to think about hard things to think about and be willing to get a little messy in the process.
Right.
But I think you kind of found us at the right time because as soon as you left, your program ruled.
Oh well, thank you.
Well, also, Jared, you've been very generous with your knowledge and what have you. For instance, I recently have been facing a large adaptive challenge around shifting from middle school to high school and also taking on teaching guitar.
Right.
So you better bet I've been consulting with Jared.
Yeah.
Thanks.
What are you doing with your guitar kids? Help.
No.
Well, I think that's one thing that's just fun about teaching is even if, all of us carry a little bit of the people that we've come in contact with over the years.
Right.
And that's just a fun thing about music and kind of how generations are all connected. It's nice. Anyway, my
So-
years with you are awesome. I think about it often.
So I think we might be just about at the phase where we start our happy hour with teachers.
Yes. So that means that Facebook needs to say goodbye to Jared Tanner. And I know, do not cry.
Or contact Kelly
Yeah.
via Facebook Messenger, and she'll copy and paste that link.
Yeah.
And you can hop on the happy hour with us that
talk.
starts right away, and it has clock hours.
That's right. Well, watching the show and then participating in the conversation has clock hours. So,
Yes.
I mean, slam dunk, grab a beverage. You can ask any of the three of us anything you want for the next half an hour. And if you have things that you hate, you can come yell at me for saying them. And whatever, let's just hang out. And let's try and move our practice more in this direction.
And even if you aren't doing clock hours, you're welcome to join. Please
Okay.
come and hang with us.
Come hang. All right. Goodbye, Facebook.
We'll see you next week.
Next week.